Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, there has been an absolutely massive amount of general shifts to the way that Diablo 4 works since the release of Season 6 and the Vessel of Hatred expansion. Probably the most overarching change is the way that progression now works within the game, the difficulty tier changes, the new level cap, and today's main subject, which is the Paragon point system. Previously, we had 225 maximum Paragon points, most of which were achieved simply by gaining levels. At maximum level, you had maximum Paragon points aside from those achieved through either Renown or the different regions, or the 4 Lilith altars that give a Paragon point as well. The altars and Renown stayed through seasons, so pretty much from Season 2 onwards, when you hit maximum level, you had maximum Paragon points, simple as that. People got used to that, people enjoyed the simplicity, but now the system and progression is quite different, and some of it is a bit of a sleight of hand from the devs, in my opinion, too. First, we've gone up to 300 natural Paragon points over 200, so Paragon level 300. We gained another region of Renown to get as well, which makes the new total maximum Paragon points be 329. This is significantly larger than what it was before. To pair with this, and arguably make it even more confusing what they wanted us to do with it, but definitely more constricting, we are now locked to only having 5 Paragon boards in our setup at any given time, which includes the starter board, which is sort of rough really. A lot of classes were extending out to 6 or even 7 Paragon boards back when we had 225 points, so now that we have even more points, being stuck on less boards is sort of sad. That's not the main thing that I want to talk about here today, because it's the Paragon points and progression as a whole. With this change, the acquisition of Paragon points changed a bit too. Maximum player level has been changed down to level 60, which gives the impression that it's easier to reach the maximum level for a player, but realistically, a level 60 character with 0 Paragon points isn't that much stronger than an old level 60 character was before if you happen to, put them in the same gear and give them the same bonus skill points. The main difference is rather than saying Paragon points are a part of player level, they split it up. What does that do? It makes it less of a necessity to complete Paragon. Early on, level 100 in Diablo 4 was supposed to be considered a real achievement to get in the game. It wasn't something that the average player was expected to hit within a month, and 2 months, even in 3 months of relatively frequent play. You have to remember, a large part of the player base is relatively casual. The players, though, didn't generally like that. A lot of the people who play the game a lot wanted to be able to hit level 100 a bit easier, and so bit by bit, every season this was moved to be less and less of a thing, with level 100 being less than a day to hit in Season 5. This made a lot of players happy, but it clearly doesn't line up with the goals of the developers, and it makes the sort of seasonal life cycle much shorter. They understand our sort of innate instinctual wish to be maximum level whenever a maximum level is set, but in order to make that work better with progression, they changed what max level truly means. Before, max level meant your character had all of its resources, the only thing left to gain was gear and improving your gear. Now max level simply means that you do not get more skill points, but Paragon is a super long-term goal, even so. Is it infinite? No. Is it meant to be completed in a day, 2 days, a week, a month? Also no. Paragon 300 is intended to be your sort of infinite grind each season, your power source that is permanently gaining and increasing in noticeable ways, even in small amounts, and you can watch the bar go up at the bottom of your screen at least a little bit with every activity that you do, and that is supposed to be a good feeling, a little bit of dopamine, especially when you reach a new Paragon point and gain a little bit of power because of it. But in reality, it's just a way for the developers to control the addictive nature of the game and the grind to incentivize you to play more. That isn't necessarily a bad thing though. All games do it. I know it sounded sort of nefarious there though, but it's not a weird thing to do. All games want you to play them more, especially ones with microtransactions. It's natural, but I think it's important that as people who play the game, we stay aware of this. What I'm trying to say really is the whole progression system flipped on its head, and the biggest part of this is convincing players that max level now only refers to regular skill points, when in reality you could easily argue by the standards set by the game itself before the expansion that no player is technically fully leveled max level until you reach Paragon 300. In other words, they've sort of sleight of handed us into being more complacent with hitting max level at 60 and then just happily trucking through Paragon levels as an afterthought, whereas beforehand these two systems were so intrinsically tied to each other that you simply could not max one without the other. The main thing to consider here, however, is for alts, secondary characters. Once you hit level 60 on a second character, you will match the Paragon progress of your main character, so it is different in that way, and it does make alts feel better as a result of this, and it makes alts feel better in the seasonal context too. But I just sort of wanted to get all of that stuff out of the way so that we're on the same page understanding why these changes were made to begin with. They wanted to extend the grind of power from experience points without removing the early important milestone of technical max level. They still wanted to feel just as satisfying for players to hit max level, but then give you a further grind to get with experience points past that. Now, with all that set up, then let's talk about the big sort of elephant in the room for this. Why is it so goddamn hard to hit Paragon level 300? Should we even be expecting to hit Paragon 300 in any season? Should we be hitting 300 just from a gameplay perspective? Or, of course, just for those who are really obsessed with it, what is the best way to try and hit Paragon 300 right now? Well, to start, Paragon leveling has a very, very exponential curve in required experience. The experience required to hit Paragon 200, the old maximum, is around 3% of the total experience that you need to hit Paragon 300. It is a fraction of a fraction. And the goal is to make Paragon 200 feel relatively achievable, very simple, and able to reach a similar power level to what you had before the season, but to make Paragon 300 near unachievable. Not quite unachievable, but near it. Obviously, the people who blast the game will still blast the game, and there are people who play this game for like 12 hours or more each day, every day, all season until they stop. And this has become one of the main goals for those types of players, and it's great that this exists to give those players a long-term goal. However, by all accounts, any player that has hit Paragon 300, even up to this point, has done so by using a bug, either intentionally or not, so consider that even now, a month into the season, people have put in over 400 hours, are still not expected to really have hit 300 Paragon points. Now there's the next question that I know some people want answered immediately, which is how did the players get there? The best legal method, for lack of a better term, no bugs or exploits, to gain Paragon experience is to just run high-tier Artificer's Pits. Unfortunately, the best way to do that is to be a Quill Volley build, Spiritborn specifically, because being able to do a tier 145 pit run in a couple of minutes is way better XP than being able to do the same thing with like a pit 100 or a pit 90, as Spiritborn is just way above the actual intended power level for other classes. So the ability to get this much experience this quickly is not really something that we should expect for future seasons, and you could argue is another bug being abused to gain Paragon levels. On top of this, it's fixed now, but there was an exploit going around for a bit where if you were in a group with, say, a tier 150 pit open, one player inside of the pit, and the other group members just walking around the open world doing things like cellar events. The cellar event completion would give the same amount of experience as the tier 150 pit completion. So this was abused by a lot of people to hit maximum Paragon while it was a thing. All that said, we hit our next question, which is how achievable should Paragon 300 be? Is the current balance of it actually a problem? Sure, players aren't really expected to hit maximum Paragon, but should we expect them to? If they had implemented it as infinite Paragon points, the exact same scaling of experience required that we have now, and just make it even exponentially slower past 300 even further up, people would not have the same complaints, right? The issue is that because there is a set maximum number on it, an undeniable milestone to hit, a tangible achievement, if we know the maximum Paragon level is 300, we all want to be Paragon level 300. If we knew it was infinite, a lot of people would be happy just sort of playing the game for other reasons, having Paragon slowly tick up in the background, not really thinking about the number. But because it is a set finite number, players hunger for it. That said, because of this, should it be rebalanced to be easier to achieve? Honestly, no, in my opinion. 250 is relatively fair to achieve in current balancing, and at least for most classes, once you hit Paragon level 250 with a 5 board limit, you are filling up most of what matters already. Everything past that is usually smaller additive bonuses that barely stir the pot as far as your power level, and every point becomes progressively less valuable, both because you have to choose less and less important options, as less good things are remaining on the boards to put points into to begin with, and because every point spent on an additive damage increase makes the next point spent on additive damage less valuable, because that's just how additive damage works. So basically, the power difference between Paragon 100 and Paragon 110 is way bigger than the power difference between Paragon level 290 and Paragon level 300. It matters, of course, don't get me wrong, it makes a difference, but I would not label it as something important, really, something required. What it is a super duper long-term goal. What makes it work, though, is that it is trackable, it is watchable, it is predictable. There's a bar permanently on your screen showing you how close or far you are from your next point. And so you have a permanent reminder that if you put time into the game, you will gain power. Even if it's a small amount, time gives you rewards. This is in comparison to the usual super endgame that we had before this, where it's all about gear drops or masterworking, these very abstract concepts where you have to rely heavily on RNG and randomness for the initial drop, then more RNG for the upgrading of the items, and you basically go from a garbage piece of gear to a perfect piece of gear with very little warning or time in between. These are big moments of excitement, but what they want is a permanent sort of little tiny bits of dopamine every time you see that bar go up. When it's all based around gear, it makes progression feel like a roller coaster. Like you hit a very tall wall at certain points that you can't upgrade past, and it's just very hard to climb over and keep getting stronger. This idea of very hard to cap Paragon levels instead gives you a consistent, permanent power game. Even if everything else fails, even if you get no RNG on your side, you still see a tangible reward for time spent playing the game. My personal opinion is that the current system is solid for Paragon. I think it rubs people a little bit the wrong way because of what Paragon used to be and how it used to work, and I think that giving it a finite cap at 300 also causes issue because the moment that the player sees a level cap on anything, they feel an instinctual need to reach it. I understand the want to not have it be uncapped though, because even if you make it unbelievably slow to gain Paragon points past level 300, exploits do happen, like the cellar glitch that I mentioned earlier. And if one of these happens that happens to be broken enough, you could easily have people walking around with 400 or 500 Paragon points, literally filling out every spot on every board you have. The problem with infinite potential is that it only takes one bug happening to break it, and then it will be broken for a long time. Hence the cap existing at 300. However, that same cap is, I think, a lot of what is causing issues for players. It's not a matter of power, because again, the difference between even 270 Paragon points and 300 isn't that big. It's just a matter of knowing there is a goal to be reached and finding players unable to reach it. The real problem here is, in my opinion, that the developers simply don't trust themselves enough to make the number be infinite. The only good reason I can see to have it be limited is because of this worry of potential future exploits that don't exist right now. You could argue maybe the Eternal Realm would get muddy if people are at like 1,000 Paragon points after like a year of playing the game, but the Eternal Realm is where things like that are supposed to happen, as far as I'm concerned. And so again, I'm left with we are capped at 300 because they're afraid of future unintended interactions, exploits, or bugs ruining a season by giving 10% of the player base just an insane amount of extra points before it can be caught, and then there's just this massive gap between the people who took advantage of the exploit and the people who didn't. My best suggestion is, on the off chance the developer is listening, make Paragon points infinite. Take that leap of faith. But then also just have an emergency button that exists, an oh shit button, where you can essentially just hit this behind the scenes and say, hey, everybody, due to some exploits, Paragon level this season will be capped at 300, just for this one season. Then you can reduce all existing accounts with more than that down to 300. It's not perfect, nothing is perfect really. Obviously you'd have to code in the function to make that possible, and even so, a lot of what I'm talking about here is my opinions on it as someone who has put in quite a lot of time to the game this season. But this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, these are my thoughts on all of it, how I would fix it if I had any sort of ability to, which obviously I don't. That just about does it though, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this sort of talk on Paragon points and the way that it's been changed to work this season. And of course, let me know your own thoughts on the Paragon system and progression and how it currently works down in the comments below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.